Well, welcome to a very unique episode of Strong My Nation podcast. I have Flint Hartwig and Brad Hawkins here with me. Before I introduce these guys, let me explain what we're doing here to those who are listening. We have a lot of listeners from around the country and around the world, and we're hitting topics normally of manhood, masculinity, raising boys, marriage, that kind of stuff. Today, we're going to get into politics. We're going to do it in a unique way. I'm preaching a series called Jesus and Politics right now, and getting into why I think the church should be more vocal, should be more involved, why historically I think we're out of step with the church. Historically, the church has been very active in politics because we think politics is merely making policies based on some moral framework for the good of the people, which means you have to define what good is, which we think the Bible has a lot to say about that. So we're in the middle of that series. If you haven't checked it out, you can go to our YouTube page or podcast and follow those sermons. But in the middle of that, we are, of course, approaching elections. So there's the national election. Everyone's got their eyes on the Kamala Trump race, which is important, and Christians need to be involved in that. And of course, we could say a lot about that. But I think maybe as important or even more important is this idea of local politics that I actually think affects people's lives more than they realize, and sometimes even more than the person who's in the White House. And the beauty of this kind of small government framework we were given, this idea of local politics, it's powerful because it was designed to put men and women in positions of elected offices that we know that we live around, and we could get to. I think that's the kind of the fundamental idea, right? Like, it's tough to get to somebody in the White House, but I can call up my commissioner. I mean, you guys are running for county commissioners. I don't know either of you very well. I got your phone numbers from friends, sent you a random text 3 days ago, and here we are. Like, that's the beauty of local government, right? That we can talk to our commissioners. So even if you're not local to Wenatchee or Chelan County, I'd hope this would be a beneficial conversation. One, to hear men who don't know each other but love the area they live in have a significant, meaningful, substantive dialogue about how they think best to move forward as a county. But secondly, to remind you that wherever you live in the United States, you live in a county. And there are commissioners there you should know by name. You should figure out how to get their phone number, and you should be talking to them because they've signed up to hear from you. They've signed up to hear from us, the people. They work for us, and we oftentimes forget that. And I think one of the problems with our politics today that I think both of you would agree with me, at least I hope you would, is that politicians have forgotten who they work for. They work for us. And if the people stop saying, hey, we consent or don't consent, we're actually failing you as in the partnership of citizens with elected officials. So if you're not local, I hope you'll still benefit from it. If you're not interested, you can check out. I get it. No harm, no foul. We'll see you back here next episode. But for those who live in the Wenatchee Valley, I think this will be very interesting and hope this benefits you as well. So guys, I'll tell the listeners what I have told you guys, and that I have not given this a ton of thought. I have a page and a half of questions, but I'm more interested in a dialogue, just kind of see where it goes. So this isn't debate format. I don't know even how to do that. I'll ask a question, I'll show it to one of you guys, and the other guy can answer. There's no time constraint on the answer other than we want to get to a bunch of questions. You've got an appointment you got to get to, so we can't be here indefinitely. But let's just have a conversation. 3 dudes that live in Chelan County that I think love this area, want to see it move forward, and see where it goes. I'll try to be neutral, but I have strong opinions as well. So I don't know where those will come out.
You have strong opinions, John?
I know, shocker. It's a huge shocker. And you said, hey, can I ask you questions? I'm like, well, no one's voting for me, but fire away. I never have a problem giving my opinion. So I broke it into 3 categories: personal, professional, and political. So I think we kind of want to get to the political as soon as we can. But for me, it always starts with the man. Who's the man? And so let's just, if you're willing to let me go there, ask some personal questions. I want to hear about your kids, your family, your wife, how you met her and why you love her. So let's start, Brad, with you.
That's
with
awesome.
Your family.
Yeah, well, I was raised in Wenatchee. My K through 12 education is Wenatchee School District. We have 2 boys, Luke and Tyler. Okay. Luke is almost 17, and Tyler is 15, doing driver's training right now. So it's a little
That's a public service warning. Anybody who's listening,
a little nerve-wracking. But after college and graduate school, I really wanted to come back to the Wenatchee Valley. I was in a relationship with Shauna, my girlfriend at the time. And we met at Baskin Robbins in Wenatchee, which is now
Mission there?
Yeah, it's now like a nail salon or something. But anyway, we met there and got to know each other a little bit in college and youth group, and then kind of stayed with our relationship. And I always wanted to come back to the Wenatchee Valley and live here, raise a family, get married, have a yellow lab, and have a good career job with growth opportunities and all these things. And I'm just so grateful and blessed that I met Shauna. She is the light of my life. We got married September 28th, 22 years ago. So just about last week, we celebrated our 22nd anniversary.
I got you beat by 3 weeks. September 1st, 22 years ago.
Yeah, well, Pastor Adam James has us both beat by a few years.
Yeah, that's because he's old.
Yeah, but we got married at the Free Methodist Church, which is now Sage Hills.
Yep.
And we waited a few years to have children, but we're excited that the kids have kept us really busy. My wife's a teacher for Wenatchee School District. I worked at a PUD for about 18 years. I got involved in school board and then state representative, and then I ran for state senator 8 years ago. And it's been a privilege of my professional career to serve our area as a state senator. Okay. And I can't remember the rest of your question.
What's one thing that you admire about Shauna? Your wife, that you love about her?
She has been there for me 100%. She is totally strong. She has my back. She is my biggest supporter. Yeah. She has been totally loyal and faithful to me. And I get a little emotional about it, but she has a way of making everybody else feel special. Yeah. And I think that is her greatest gift. When we pray at night, we talk about trying to shine the light, and she shines the light every day, even when it's not as if she's living stress-free or doesn't have challenges. I mean, we all do, but she just has a way of making everybody else feel special, and including me and my family. And I'm really grateful to have her in my life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Flint, a little bit about you. Your family, married, how you met your wife, and how you got here.
Yeah. So I was originally, I was born in Colville. When I was a little kid, we moved to Peru. So all of my earliest, before I even had childhood memories, we lived in Peru, and we lived in some rough country, backside of the Andes kind of stuff, in a mud hut. My dad was teaching, he was drilling water wells and doing humanitarian work. So
really?
Yeah, we came back to the States for a minute when I was like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4. And then by the time I was about 5-ish, we moved to Honduras, and we moved into a little village in the middle of nowhere. And I think we were like we were definitely the only gringos for within hours. We knew this other family in San Pedro was about 2-3 hours away. Wow. So growing up like that was interesting, to say the least. We had an outhouse, and we used firewood for cooking until we got a gas stove, and then we'd go to town and fill these bottles with gas. And our lighting was Coleman lanterns, and I have a lot of memories of Mom sitting up at night with a Coleman lantern and a microscope, going through libraries of every villager's stool samples, trying to identify what organisms are killing them, and so, and then she delivered babies and started clinics, and we worked with Doctors Without Borders and Habitat for Humanity and every charitable organization you could think of. So we're in-country liaison. I can remember being 8 years old, running a cauterizer for Doctors Without Borders in open surgery, because the nurses don't speak English and the doctors don't speak Spanish. So you got an 8-year-old trying to translate in common, layman's terms, what medical terms.
You speak Spanish?
Yeah, fluent. Yeah, grew up down there, so all my friends were from there, and the only person that I spoke English with was, people would be the folks inside my own home. And it's just a really neat way to grow up. And by the time I turned 13, we moved to the U.S. And, of course, living out of the country so long, I've been homeschooled. So I have exactly 1 year of public school under my belt. And met my wife the first time. I was driving fence posts in a field, and she poked her head out of a window of a house across the way, and I thought, wow, there's an angel over there. And
I gotta go meet that angel.
Yeah, and so actually didn't get to meet her that day. We didn't meet till for probably a year or so after that, on a chance deal where my mom was buying homeschool supplies from her mom. Yeah, and they got to talking, and hey, we should get the kids together to hang out. And so we met. We were about 15. And we've been together ever since. And so we've been married for, I'm going to screw this up, 23 years.
Okay.
So
And
we
how
got
many
married.
kids you have again?
We have no kids.
Okay.
We have not. We can't have kids the natural way.
Okay.
And we've explored adoption several times.
Yeah.
And my wife is one of, depending on how you count them up, like 12 kids. So the whole time when we were dating, when she was a teenager, everywhere we went, she had 5 kids with her.
Yeah.
Which are all her younger siblings. So
Yep.
she's raised a bunch of kids already.
Wow. No
And
kidding.
no, the bureaucracy around an adoption is really challenging, and
Yep.
it's heartbreaking. We've gotten close a couple times just for the state to give a kid back to some abusive folks, and
Yep.
so it's kind of disheartening. But no, at this point, probably don't plan on having any. We've been helping other folks in the community the best we can, and I guess we'll leave our wealth to charity.
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you mind? I mean, this. We'll get into politics later, but just
Yeah.
on the personal side, it's like, what's that journey been like? Wanting to have kids, not being able to have them. We have a lot of folks like that in our church, and it can be very discouraging, disheartening. What's that been like for you guys?
Yeah, it's definitely it's one of those things that when you don't think about it, it's fine.
Yep.
But every once in a while, it'll rear its ugly head.
When somebody asks you about it.
No, not when somebody asks you about it. It's more
Yeah.
when her sister just had a baby,
Yeah.
and you see how joyful she is to be with that baby, and like,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be rad if we had one of our own? And
Mhm.
those are the times that it hits home a little more.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, we have families going down the adoption road too, and it's wild,
Oh, yeah.
wild how hard and expensive it is. And we have families $10, $15, $20, $30,000 in,
Oh yeah.
and no assurance of anything. It's just it just feels like a game. So I empathize with that. I thought as you want to say something?
Oh well, I wanted to tell you why I love my wife.
Oh yeah. I got you got
Sorry to run long.
No,
but,
no. So he loves her because she shines the light and makes him feel good.
I think.
Why do you love your wife?
I think this might be true for a lot of couples, but I feel like a man in the relationship should be an absolutely unmovable post.
Yeah.
So when life gets crazy for her, she can come and bump into you and make sure that you're still there. You're not moving, and you
Yeah.
have to be absolutely unwavering in that
Yeah.
role. But for a woman, I feel like it's different, and this is what makes me love Jamie so much, and that is that she is like my little safe place. I can tell her
Yeah.
anything, and when I'm out in the world, I have to carry on a certain role, and you're not going to see me cry,
Yeah.
but she will.
Yep.
And for me, just having that backup at home that is always there, always understanding, always has my back, like Brad said, that I really feel like that's important in life, and
Yep.
everybody should get to experience it, and hopefully we can be the kind of men that we need to be.
That's right.
So that those kind of girls want to be with us.
Yep. That's awesome. I mean, that's awesome. It makes me think, and again, I know we want to get to politics, and people are interested about policies, which are important. But behind those politics and policies are the person, right?
Yeah.
And you bring that worldview into your office, into that role. There's going to be a lot of people listening, I think, that value family. Yeah. So just, a 60-second riff, like without putting words in your mouth, I'm not going to tell you that family is the essential cornerstone of society and it needs to be supported in every way. I won't say those. I won't preload you with.
Yeah, don't say that.
Yeah,
don't say what you just
I
said.
won't bias you to my like. What would, just speaking from your heart, what's your conviction regarding the family? How do you feel about family? And I'm talking about a husband and a wife with or without children that are endeavoring to grow strong families. What's your thought about the role of the family in society?
My family is everything to me.
Yeah.
And I just want to say on something you had just mentioned, when it comes to political candidates, their spouses are often not always acknowledged as part of the process,
Yeah.
but they themselves are putting themselves out there too, supporting their spouses.
Yeah.
Campaigns are really stressful.
Yeah.
And I think Flint and I have probably been at this for 5 months now.
I lost track.
Yeah. But it's a grind.
Yeah.
And there's ups and there's downs.
Yeah.
And Shauna is that person for me too.
Yeah, they're on the ride
that
with
safe
you.
space.
You get
Absolutely.
shot at, they're getting shot
Absolutely.
at.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
helping the campaign and everything.
Yep.
But
Things get said about you in the media or other people.
Absolutely.
It feels personal.
Yeah.
That's their man.
yeah, and for me, I can kind of have a kind of a thick skin because I've been at this a little bit. But it's hard. It's hard for spouses. I know
Yes.
Shauna takes it hard. But one thing I was going to say really cool about Shauna is like we've been riding the Apple Blossom Parade for several years. and my dad drives us in his convertible, and it's my family. And more people are shouting out to my wife and my dad, and then it's like, yeah, I'm the state senator.
You're just eye
like,
candy, bro.
Yeah, but for me, to your question, the family is everything for me.
Yeah.
I really don't even have that many friends.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have time for it because I've had such a busy life, but I have, a handful of close friends. But to me, my wife is my best friend.
Yeah.
My kids, I want to do everything with.
Yeah.
And fortunately, somehow, some way, I'm still kind of cool to my kids.
That's awesome.
I knew
Let's
like 5 or 8 years ago, this window of time is closing on me, and the kids are going to want to hang out with their friends, and I was so scared of it. But now it's like, hey,
it's good.
I'm still kind of cool. I mean, I embarrass them a little bit, but I just want to be with them as much as I can. And honestly, that's one of the reasons I'm making the transition to try to pursue this position. I think I can bring a lot of experience to the county, my interactions with local, state, and federal officials, but also serving as a state senator from central or eastern Washington and splitting time between Olympia, our state capital, and Wenatchee has been a real grind. 3 to 4 months a year away. For a while there, we had the kids over with us. We all moved to Olympia, including our dog. People say, hey, Olympia is a tough place. You never know who to trust. So if you want a friend, bring a dog. So we brought our dog too, and we lived over there. But then it got to a point where it was difficult with the kids in school, keeping continuity with their education, different things. So eventually, and then there were the COVID years, and I was able to work remotely as a legislator, which was an interesting process. But I'd get to tuck my kids into bed every night. And then lately, for the last couple of years, going over to Olympia and looking ahead towards the next legislative session would have been 4 months in Olympia. And the legislative district as it is, I'd be making a lot of travel on the non-legislative session months over to the other side of the district. It was just a lot of time away from my family. And my kids were like, hey, Dad, you could run for this position, be here year round. And the more I thought about it, that made sense. But to me, my family is everything. And if I could spend as much time with them as possible, it'd be great. It's a little more challenging now that we have teenage boys and one of them drives. So, I mean, they're always kind of coming and going. And my wife and I feel like we're kind of just coordinating their lives a little bit and helping them out. But, also the older one, Luke, started his year as running start at Wenatchee Valley College. And that was kind of difficult on Shauna because she and I are both beginning to acknowledge that, hey, they're going to be moving on here soon.
Runway's getting short.
And I think for us, our challenge has always been set a good example, raise them right. And if you are successful as parents, when that time comes, you should be confident in them entering the world and being ready to make a difference. They'll still need our support, but that is the goal for Shauna and I over the next 3 to 4 years to kind of prepare them for
get them launched
a competitive world that they're entering into with a lot of challenges.
It's competitive in one way, but in another way, it's like if they get up on time, show up on time, work hard, they're going to be the top 5%. Anywhere they go, you know what I mean?
That's what my dad taught me. He taught me, hey, organization is the key to success. If you can show up on time and be ready, be organized, and give your best effort,
you're going to stand out. Especially today.
Organization plus action.
Trying your best. Trying your best is what we try to also instill in our kids. You don't have to succeed, but give it your best effort.
Give it a shot.
And that's all that you can expect from yourself, and hopefully all that other people can expect from you too.
Yep, for sure.
But if you don't give it your best, that's not good enough.
You're never going to know what you could have done. Yeah, for sure. How about you, Flint? I don't know you personally, but I actually do know, I know quite a few folks that work for you. And the regular testimony I've gotten is like, he treats us like family. So what's your view of family?
Well, family, obviously not having kids probably would meet a slightly different definition. And honestly, at this stage in our lives, we have been spending so much time and effort and on our parents, actually. So I've been blessed to be able to, take care of my wife's side. We provide housing and stuff for her. And it's just been such a blessing to have them around. A lot of times we kind of forget about the generation that's above us. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, we take, and then we kind of forget to give back. Yep. And this is one thing that you see in other cultures is taking care of the elderly. And I think that together we need to do a better job of that. So we spend a lot of time with my dad, and he's out traveling right now. He's actually in Africa for a minute. And, but it's been so great to spend so much time with them. And then also, and when you own a company and you have a lot of people that will put in years of their lives working for you, you can't help but kind of create a family atmosphere. And we've been doing so many things with young folks and helping them get into houses and stuff like that, and then watching their families grow, and having this new little niece in our life has been awesome. So yeah, it's again, not having children of my own, that component is definitely missing. But yeah, family's everything as far as the rest of goes, and you want to be careful not to just work your whole life away. And not spend time with those that you love, because family isn't always somebody who's related to you.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And life is too short. My dad just turned 75. My mother actually passed away some years ago after a long battle with Parkinson's and dementia. And that's
Are both your parents still alive?
No, just dad.
Just dad. Okay.
Yeah. And that's something actually I wanted to ask you, Pastor Josh, but I just don't understand why that happened to my mom. And I'm sure you get these questions about cancer and all these different things, but my mom lived a super clean life at a real early age. I mean, she didn't super clean life. I felt like she did everything right, did all the checkups and stuff. And she got diagnosed super young with Parkinson's and dementia. It was the combination of the two. It kind of took her mind over time and her body. My dad lost her, and then we eventually lost her again.
Yeah,
and
2 deaths.
It was like a 10-year process, and she ended up needing to go to the assisted living facility that used to be across the street from where I grew up. I was in the orchard right there at Blossom Valley. We grew up on Orchard Street when there were orchards. I picked cherries in that orchard, but my mom ended up in the assisted living and eventually the memory care. Drained my dad quite a bit financially. Yeah. And it took a bit of him that, we'll never get back. But why did that happen? So as Christians, I try to ask myself, I miss my mom. So it's not just... My family's not my kids. I live close to my dad. We get to see him a lot, but time is short. And I just don't know why. Yeah. Do you have any guidance on that?
Bro, if I had the answer to that question, I'd put it in a book and be a billionaire. I think there are things beyond our ability to understand, especially in relationship with suffering and evil, which I think really highlights the point you guys are both making. Like, for the time that we have, make it count with those you love. And I think that's part of why we're having this conversation, even not to pivot away from that. But
it's a tough question. I know. I just thought
it is. I'm like, oh, that's a weighty one. How much time have we got? Because you're talking about death and suffering and evil. I told our church last Sunday, one of the reasons politics matters, I think, is because the Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children. And that's not just a financial inheritance. It's a faith inheritance, a relational inheritance, and also a social inheritance. Like, as I'm looking out, to get specific to Chelan County is either going to be better or worse to live in, easier or harder to live in when I die and my kids are here than it was when I lived here. It's not going to stay static. It's going to get better or worse. That's just the nature of things, right? And so I want it to be better than it is now, which is why we should care about talking about this stuff, because we got to define what is better, and then we got to define how to get there. So with that in mind, I got a bunch of short questions here. Like, how would you define making Chelan County better?
I want to answer that, but before I do, I want to mention something. A lot like Brad, I feel so much what you're saying. My mom passed in her 50s of a very aggressive form of breast cancer.
And how old was your mom when she died?
Boy, I don't know. It was a few years ago, so she's maybe
And she was
70.
how old? 52?
She was
But she
56.
was
That's young, you
with
guys.
Parkinson's dementia, though. You when it happens, that's when
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. You start
So-
losing. They're both are early deaths. That's very rare.
My hunting buddy and workout partner died of ALS last year, and left behind a house full of beautiful children and a wife. And I'm talking about a young guy. He's our age, and I think that nobody here has the answer to the question that you ask, but I think the critical thing is how each one of us responds in. Don't let the time that you had together be wasted, obviously. Think about the lessons that they taught you. Just not sit down and teach you a lesson, right? They didn't sit down and lay something out, but just in the way that they handled themselves. And in particular, what I'm thinking about right now is the way in which Kevin and my
Kevin
mom.
Bromley?
Yeah.
Gosh, I went to high school with Kevin.
So the way that Kevin handled his passing, he and I would go have meals and stuff together, and while he was in his ailment and knew that he was going to die, and the way that Mom handled herself, knowing that she has a diagnosis and there's a date on the calendar and this is coming around the pipe. Both of those people handled that with such dignity and such grace the whole time that I think that those are lessons that we can learn about life and the way that, and if you think you've had a bad experience, you haven't until you've experienced what Kevin went through.
Yeah.
And what just an awesome person, I mean, I can't think of a better dude. And then he gets this horribly short straw, nothing he can do about it, and just never complained. He didn't say a foul word one time. He just put his chin up, leaned in, did what he had to do, spent every moment he could with his kids, and then the inevitable thing came and went. And I think the way that they handled that with such grace, my mom was the same way, that's the lesson we need to take away from that. And maybe that's part of the reason why those things happen to us in life, is so that we can become stronger people, or at least don't let it be wasted. So
that's a good one, man. Yeah. That's the great leveling field. We just did a funeral for Noah Phillips at church a couple weeks ago, and 25 falls off a mountain, gone. Sweet girl who's going to get engaged with this fall. You just sit there and you're like, man, you're like, all of a sudden things just that used to be up here to 10 are like at a 3. In terms of like, we got to do this or do that, or, and Spectre's out here driving me crazy. Yeah. And you're like, okay. So it is good. It's interesting we've kind of stumbled into framing the political conversation in the context of life and death. We're here for a limited amount of time. Let's enjoy it, because there's a lot to fight over and fight against. That's good. But man, you got to laugh along the way. You got to enjoy your wife, the wife of your youth. You got to enjoy your family, your friends. You got to eat some good food, drink some good drink, because it would be a shame, one, to live in this valley that's so amazing. If you're listening enough around here, like, please don't move here.
Don't come here.
Yeah, but it's amazing. Yeah. Wow, don't Google pictures. Yeah. I mean, but I think we'd all say,
actually, if you're watching this podcast, come on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If we'd all say it's the best place to live in the world. I mean, we've all traveled a bunch, and the perspective. Interesting. I want to get to this soon, but like, what's your perspective on a first world country, having lived in a third world country? I want to get into that, because that's a unique perspective, because you appreciate the infrastructure that's here that we've just grown up with in a different way. But I'll tell you, we should, never not enjoy this place, because Chelan County, I think, is the best place to live in the world, and I've gotten to see a lot of the world. And secondly, we shouldn't stop working to make it better. So, like, not to give you a charge, but if you don't win, you shouldn't stop working to make Chelan County better. And if you don't win, you shouldn't. And I know you won't, because we want to make it better. And so that's a part of what makes this conversation so helpful, is like, there's no lose-lose here, in the sense that we're all going to three in my lane, in your lane, in your lane. We're going to keep pushing to make this place better. In fact, my personal commitment to my kids is I refuse to let it get worse. I'm going to find a way to work to make this place better, so then it's like a campsite. My dad always taught me, you leave it better when you found it. Same with our county. We want to leave it better when you found it. So let's pivot to more of the political questions. And I got a bunch here. Some are maybe more intelligent than others, and some you might have to kind of educate me on. So first of all, for those listening, and let's keep these answers maybe shorter, and then we'll get into some kind of longer ones. Like, what does a commissioner, I'll start with you, Flynn, and go to you. What does a commissioner do, and why is it such an important local government role?
Can I answer the previous question first real quick?
What was the previous question?
The question that you asked about.
Oh, the third world country perspective?
No, the one before that.
Oh, see, I've got like 8 questions out here.
I'll answer it too.
Yeah. So,
what was my previous question?
You mentioned about making this town better and how that pertains to the law. So I just wanted to say that laws are downstream of ethics, and ethics are downstream of morality.
Yes,
so
I
if
agree.
you have, everybody at this table has their own morals. We get together, we agree on a moral.
Yep.
Don't kill people.
Yep.
We agree, that becomes an ethic, and then we can codify that into law.
Yep.
So I think what's critical as county commissioners, and this kind of answers the question a little bit, there is a lawmaking component to a county commissioner.
Okay.
And if there are such thing as ethics, we think of ethics as being positive things, good things,
Right.
but there are ethics that are absolutely wrong.
Okay.
For example, in the 20th century, you could point to various things, Nazi Germany.
Yep.
It was ethical in their minds to exterminate a whole race of people.
Yep.
And it was also legal because the law flowed from their ethic.
Yes.
Enough people had screwed up morals that they got together and formed a screwed up ethic
Yep.
that led to a screwed up law
Yep.
that led to the death of millions of people. So each person in the system is a node, and each person in the system has their own morality. So if I say it's moral to eat cats, and I can convince you that it's moral to eat cats. I don't know if it's moral not to eat cats. And then we get Brad on board, and all of a sudden we're all a bunch of cat eaters. Ethically, we start to believe this, whatever the thing is, and then
Right.
we codify it into law. Next thing you know,
You got a
we're
bad
doing
law.
an evil thing
Yes.
that is perfectly legal.
Yep.
And it can go the other way too. It doesn't have to be an active. It can be the fact that we ignore another bad ethic that forms in our society that gets codified into law, and we didn't do anything to stop it.
Yep.
So I'm going to take that as my answer to your county commissioner question, because part of that is creating the code. I think that it's very critical to not lose focus of your North Star.
Yes.
So when everybody's screaming, let's eat cats, if it were wrong to eat cats, I'm not saying it is or isn't. I've eaten cougar. It's delicious. So
Tastes like chicken?
ham. Cougar ham is amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you had a
I
cougar?
think you just lost the WSU vote.
Yeah. Sorry, I meant huskies. Yeah. So I'll let Brad answer the maybe more of the nuts and bolts because I'm taking up too much time. But I do want to just kind of point that out that you want. Brad has his morals and I have mine, and those cannot be separated from lived experiences. If you are a piece of hardware and I am a piece of hardware, our souls are our software and our lived experiences are the data we have access to. So I just want every voter in this county to take a good hard look at both of us and make an honest decision from your heart which person do you think lines up. And if it's Brad, that's wonderful. If you win, I'll help you every way I can. I hope you'll call on me. And I'm going to move on with my life. I will not be sad for a moment. And that's how bureaucracy. I almost said bureaucracy. I meant democracy.
That's a 4-letter word around
Works.
here, if you ask me.
Yeah. So
What you're bringing up, like I mean, we could dive into this because this is like my world a little bit, but I wouldn't get too far into that. But part of it is like, where do you draw your sense of moral authority from? Because I'll just put my cards on the table.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the government should submit to the moral law of God. That's my position as a Christian, right? Because if the government doesn't have an authority above itself, it becomes its own authority with nothing above it, right? And so I think that's codified in our Declaration. I think it's codified in our Constitution, but is that where we're at today? And so the question becomes, if you lose that moral North Star, what are you drawing from for your sense of moral? So maybe the question we get into, like, what's your source of ultimate moral authority? be a question. You want to get into that?
Yeah. Well,
Sure.
and I can answer too the role of the county commissioner a little bit.
Yeah.
too.
What's the role of county commissioner?
And it's important for your viewers and listeners because every county government may be structured a little bit differently. But in Washington, at least in the eastern Washington counties, King and Snohomish County are different because they have a county council and a county executive.
Right.
But we have 3 members of the county commission. Each member represents a different segment of Chelan County. Flint and I are running for the District 3 position, which includes North Wenatchee, Sunny Slope, Eniat, Chelan, Manson, all the way up to Stehekin.
Okay.
But the primary election, which we had in August, was district-based.
Okay.
And then this election in November is countywide.
Copy that.
But the role of the county commissioners...
We have right now Kevin Overbay is the south end.
Yeah,
guy,
District
right?
1,
District 1,
which is South Wenatchee, Malaga, Stemilt Hill, and then
Sean Smith.
Part of Wenatchee.
Cashmere,
Upper Valley, Leavenworth, Plain.
Yep.
Yeah, and then District 3. But
so here's the question: do you have to live in the district that you're running for?
Yes, yes, you do.
Okay.
And the role of the county commissioners basically are a lot of different functions. They serve as the legislative branch of the county.
Okay.
So there's 3 of them. They also, in many ways, have an executive function, sort of like the state legislature and the governor.
Right.
But they also have almost 3 branches of government. This sort of quasi-judicial activity where they sometimes get appeals that are made that go directly to the Board of Commissioners. They set the budget for the county. Our budget is about $57 million on an annual basis for Chelan County.
And where is that coming from?
Most of the revenue sources for Chelan County are sales tax and property tax. But there are a variety of other fees and things. But when you start to see sales tax or economic things flatten out, or maybe property issues, then those are less revenues coming into the county to deliver our services. But there are some staff members and departments that report directly to the Board of Commissioners, Human Resources, Community Development, Natural Resources. But then the county commissioners also interact with separate countywide elected officials, the sheriff, the treasurer, the auditor, the assessor, all of those,
which I currently have issue with. We'll hopefully get into that.
But all of those county officials are independently elected, but the county commissioners determine the budget, the land use, the regulations. They also should be setting the strategic vision for the county, and also serve essentially as the spokespeople for the county when they interface with folks in Olympia or externally. So all of those things sort of comprise the role of the county commissioners. In our county, county commissioners meet twice a week. Flint and I have attended a lot of meetings.
It's a dumb question.
They also work
position?
year-round. It is a paid position.
It's a paid position,
Yeah.
okay.
It's essentially a full-time job because outside of those 2 days a week, county commissioners are doing lots of things, within their district or otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they
you're
like running like a $50 million business.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of business components to it.
On the board of so many other things, Link is another 28 million, and then
in addition to the 50
so
million?
they serve on like the Chelan Douglas Transportation Council, Link Transit, Rivercom Board, and they represent the county in a lot lot of ways.
There's something.
Go ahead.
Real quick thing to add here. The county government, the system of government, is, to Brad's point, basically filled with folks that are hired, not elected. There's a lot of them, and a lot of them have been there 15, 20 years. And I would expect, as someone who worked for a department for 15 or 20 years, that you would be looking out for that department, and the directors of those departments do a real good job at doing that. But the county commissioners, at the end of the day, are also your representative as a citizen here. You can't expect the head of any particular department to necessarily have your best interest in mind all the time,
right?
Because they're running a department,
right?
The human nature says that they're going to take care of their department, make sure the department is fully funded, make sure their people are taken care of, and they're very interested in taking care of their department. And when you come in from the public, you're that person that interacts with them and goes away.
You're the bad guy almost.
Well, they see you and then they don't. the person who is there to represent you is your county commissioner.
Okay.
The county commissioner, whether it's him or me, is not there to always act in the best interest of these half a dozen departments.
Yeah.
You have to take care of them. You have to foster them as your children. But
Right.
again, you wouldn't give your kids an ice cream cone every time they wanted one, right?
Right.
So your ultimate responsibility is back to the citizens that elected you.
Yep.
And I think that's the one key difference of that particular seat is that you're not really over a department.
Over a lot.
You're over a bunch of departments in a less formal way. Like, obviously the auditor is going to have the most to do with the auditor's position. And yes, he's elected. And yes, he needs to be responsible to the people. But his little world he lives in is that auditor's office. There is no little world you live in as a county commissioner.
Right.
You live in all worlds slightly, and your responsibility, number one, first and foremost, is back to the people that put you there.
Yeah.
You are a representative of the people.
So on that note, then, there's there's a million ways to
fired up.
Yeah, there's a million ways to go with this. Questions we could ask, like we could do the general questions like, what's the strongest thing about Chelan County you love? What's the weakest thing we need to work on? What's all the opportunities? We could get into all that if we want, that are maybe more generic. But we could just go right to my personal frustrations.
Let's hear it.
My podcast. But as a guy who's tried to do a lot of projects in the county, buy property, build homes, remodel my homes, own rentals, build this place we're sitting in right now, it has been an absolute royal pain in the rear. And most of my friends are builders. Most of my friends are friends in the private sector. And I hear repeatedly, why is it so hard to do good in our county? It shouldn't be so hard for good people to do good things. And what we run into is kind of this nameless, faceless bureaucracy with these kind of petty tyrants choking us with regulations and rules that are, quite frankly, utterly ridiculous. And you start, and these, I'm 45. I got some experience. I'm slightly dangerous with the amount of knowledge I have now and resources. And all my buddies are like, they either give up or they go somewhere else. And that's happening not like in Washington State, it's happening in our county. Like guys that I know and love have resources. They could do good things. The housing crisis, we don't need to have it. I know guys that are willing to build cheap houses if they were allowed to, but the overregulation is just gotten to the point where it's out of control. Now, I don't know how much a commissioner has access to changing that, but I guess my question is, one, do you see the bureaucracy that I'm seeing that's actually, I think, choking out the small businessman? And if you do, what could you do to minimize it if you were in that role, if anything? And I don't know the answer to that, but I'm throwing it out there.
You want to?
Yeah, I agree. It's been a big issue.
Does my question make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And it's been a big issue in the campaign. I know Flint
resonates with me.
Flint is very passionate about it.
You're a builder.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh. Yeah.
So it's like every county is a little bit different. In Chelan County, in many respects, we are a more mature community. So when you look at kind of Wenatchee.
What do you mean by mature?
Well, in terms of
developed.
Yeah. So Wenatchee is more built out than Douglas County. I could see there's a lot of growth and opportunities and maybe more flexibility in Douglas County. But there's no doubt that the community development department has been a big focus of the county in terms of
I'll say it publicly. The community development department is broken.
Yeah.
It's broken. It's run by people that have no appreciation, I believe, for the private sector. Yeah. They have no appreciation for the hardworking small businessman that's out there trying to do good. You have petty, tyrannical inspectors running around that are so arbitrary in how they run their rules. Like I'll give you an example. I know this is your time, not my time.
You're talking about the city though, because Grace City is in the city of Wenatchee, correct?
So I build houses in the city, in the county.
Okay.
I've done building everywhere.
Okay.
And
they're the same.
Yeah, they're the same.
Well, we don't have to pick on Chelan County Building Department. We can pick on Wenatchee Building Department and Chelan County Building Department.
That's right. It's all a mess.
They're both the same.
And what you have, and this is maybe the nature of bureaucracy in general, is you have a set of plans that you're given. Okay, build this. And then they come out and they're like, well, you need to add this or do that. You're like, well, that's not in the plans. Well, you got to do it anyways. Well, why? Because there's a rule that exists somewhere. But you stamped and approved these plans. And now we're spending time, money, energy with, in my case, donated charity dollars to do these things at
Have
the
you had him do it
whims.
to you once the building's up?
What's that?
Have you had him do it to you once the building is up?
Oh, at every phase.
Like literally tear stuff down to redo it?
At
That's
every
happened to
phase.
me multiple
Yep.
times.
Put it down, pick it up, and then we're halfway through tearing down. They come back out. Oh, you know what? We were wrong about
Never
that. You
mind.
can put it back up.
Yep.
Well, I just spent freaking 4 weeks and a lot of money
Yeah.
doing what you said we had to do. And so there's this, they have power without accountability, right? Like who are they accountable to? We can't get at them because we can't vote about them. And they're working from a place of they have, like, you know, you go into the planning department and it's like, whatever, if they're in a good mood, you might get by. If you're in a bad mood, you might not. But I don't like the feeling of begging for permission to be an American, to be free to
Land of the
develop.
free, home of the brave, right?
And there are a lot of guys like me listening right now that are ready to do a lot of good things in this town if the bureaucracy would get out of the way and if the regulations would get tamped down. So I interrupted you. You were answering my question.
It is a challenge. I think
the heat behind my frustration is felt by, I guarantee, every business owner in this county.
I agree.
Every single business owner.
I understand. And
it's
not
broken.
just you. I think it's important to consider some of these regulations are come from the state. And I've been in, the political pendulum has swung way over in the state of Washington. And over the last 4 years in particular, a whole host of regulations been coming down the pipeline, federal impacts and things. But I do believe that the planning department, and I was just in there touring it just last week, needs to be more customer service focused. I think when people come in, and they've had a lot of challenges.
That's the understatement of the year.
Well,
but
I should say,
I agree.
There's been a lot of turnover in the director position. And it was really, then there was an interim and then another interim and now a new director recently for a couple of years. There's been a lot of turnover in the staff as well. And then the COVID years, and I think serving in a lot of these positions is kind of difficult to recruit and retain staff and have that consistency. And so people were getting mixed messages, and we had that with our family member. I went in, someone told me this. They told me I could do it. I came back, wanted to get the permit, and they said different answer. So there has to be more consistency, more continuity, and more customer service. I do believe they have been reducing the timeline on some of the permit applications, but some of the applications there are other entities like state and others that they're dependent upon to get information. So it is a wild mess in some respects. But one of the things I noticed in terms of being customer service, and I noticed this right off the bat, when you walk in there, members of the public, there's kind of like this half wall. And the staff, a couple staff members are behind that. And so you come up, and it just seems to me that sometimes the thought is people walk in there kind of with their head down thinking they're going to tell me what I did wrong. And I think the mindset has to be when people walk in, how can we help you be successful? How can we, and
the posture that I experience often is we're suspicious. They're suspicious of us. You're like, I'm a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen, and I don't like being treated like I'm a criminal. I don't like being treated like I'm trying to circumvent the system. I'm trying to play the game you're creating, and you're making so many new rules every week. I can't keep up with it. That's the experience.
They don't interpret the rules consistently from project to project. They can't even tell you what
consistency piece you were
and the continuity of staff. But I
Yeah.
also think if people could come in and say, you know what, according to the framework, you can't do that. But if you did this, we think it would work.
Yeah.
So it has to be more of like, rather than trying to shut someone down, try to help them be successful. And I even think something as simple as remodeling that entrance, getting the people away from behind the wall there, and maybe having a conference room, have some coffee, and when customers walk in, sit them down and try to figure it out together. I think that I think it is a mindset and a cultural thing, and it will take some years to turn that around.
Where does that mindset come from?
Well, I think it comes from the staff, the directors, the commissioners themselves setting the direction in the code, because they're trying to interpret the code. And this is another thing is,
do commissioners have a say on the code? I mean,
absolutely.
Like you get a code book out, it's just massive. So
the commissioners are like the legislature.
If we voted for you, could you go in there and go,
this is an
half
area,
these commissioners,
and the commissioners
should
should feel more empowered to do that. And that's one of my thought processes is the commissioners back. My dad was a commissioner.
I was just going to say, your dad was a champ.
Yeah, thanks. And he
would do that. He would go over there and say, this is wrong. This is evil. fix it.
It's like-
and then they would do it.
Because their job
they
is
can
to
fix the
interpret the
code.
code.
And go over there and say, give this man a permit.
Well,
and
think
that's
of it
what his
this way.
dad would do all the time.
Think of
Yeah.
it this way, Josh.
Which is great.
The county commissioners are like
And
the
not to interrupt,
legislature.
but that's the part that's frustrating sometimes. Not in a bad way that he would do that, but it's like we would fight and fight and fight and fight. Like this is one example. I keep interrupting you. I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
But one example where like we were trying to get a grading permit. It's like we're losing building time. You know what I mean? You're just like we're going this and that. This come. The whole thing. Everyone that gets a say, right? And then we're in there. This is one example. I won't use names or the specific piece of property, but this is an example of this where the guy goes, "Hey, I heard somebody died in your church this week." This is probably 7 years ago. I was like, yeah, it was tragic. He's like, man, I feel really bad. He's like, here, just take this permit. Just you guys. And I'm like, well, that was kind of nice of you, but it took somebody dying in my church for you to give me the blankety blank permit. And what it told me was they have more arbitrary license
We've experienced the same thing with
to
newborn
do
babies.
things than so they can fall back in the rule when they don't want to play ball.
You want to get a permit? Take a newborn baby with you.
Yeah.
Seriously. If you walk in with a newborn baby, you get permits right away.
Yeah. It's just brutal.
Yeah.
It's just brutal. So I've interrupted both of you here.
I just wanted to clarify, but to your question, the county commissioners are essentially the legislative branch of Chelan County.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You're telling me that
So we're like the
Kevin
legislature.
and Sean and one of you could single-handedly reduce the level of bureaucracy I got to wade through to do anything in this county?
Well, they have, so just like the Washington State Legislature, where I'm coming from, have the authority to make and change laws.
Yeah.
Chelan County commissioners and other commissioners across the country have the authority to make and change their code. Because the staff's direction, since they're not accountable to the voters,
from the
is
commissioners.
to interpret the code as written. And so in some respects, if the code doesn't work the way the board intends it to, the board should modify it to make it work the way it's supposed to.
Wow. So that's super
But
helpful.
there's also state laws and other regulations. So
you're interfacing with.
We can't necessarily circumvent all of those things.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's your perspective on bureaucracy?
Boy.
Planning department. What would you do to
How much
fix
time
it?
you got? So I want to point out a couple things
Open
real
up a
quick.
can.
Like the inherent, there are things when you see it, you say that's evil.
Right.
And you see it, you say that's good. So let's take currently right now, this moment, there's a guy in Malaga who received a $223,000 fine and subsequent lien on his house for converting his garage into living space without asking for permission.
Converting his garage into living
Converted a
space.
shop on his property. There was already an existing structure, had lived through who knows how many winters. So all the arguments about, well, it's going to blow over, it needs more engineering, it's going to fall in, all that's nonsense because the thing's been there for years. And as a county commissioner, I would have said, okay, look, you have broken the law. You need a building permit. I think you should get a building permit. That's what the law says. My personal belief is that process should be infinitely easier so that we build more stuff. But he should be fined and given a clear path forward and make it easy to get back on track. Just like when you speed, you get a ticket. But then they don't impound your car and put a $30,000 lien against your car because you sped, right?
Right.
So now he's facing losing his house. Well, at the same exact time, within miles of his home, we have homeless encampments who have erected structures of wood and metal and everything else. And the county, and I went down and talked to them, the homeless folks, and they said they've received no visits and there's no red tags on their shanties. So we're sitting here saying this is okay. We're not even going to look at that while we go after this other guy and hammer him to the tune of $250,000. Look at what it takes to build an RV park. I have walked away from RV parks. I just picked up the development standards the other day. It is 8 pages of nonsense. Every single
To build one, you mean?
To build an RV park, every single space requires 1,200 square feet with a separation from your neighbor so far off the fence, a landscape perimeter, a fire truck turnaround, on and on and on and on.
Blah, blah.
So your RV park basically becomes economically unsustainable by design, so that you won't do it.
That's right.
In the city of Wenatchee, in order to build an RV park, it's allowed in one zoning, and that zoning is waterfront mixed use, which is Walla Walla Street and down around Pybus.
Which
The
there's no
minimum
land in
lot
there.
size before you can apply is 10 acres.
Yeah.
So the property doesn't exist. So
Doesn't
basically,
exist.
and they said, hey, we just wanted to push them out in the county. We're going for density. I can respect that. They should have just said no RV parks.
Right.
Because they basically defaulted to no RV
But
parks.
that's how
here's what's
bureaucracy
fun.
makes things illegal. They make it impossible. They don't make it illegal. They make it impossible to do to the process.
But how about the safe parks in our town?
Yeah.
So here's Safe Park being paid for by you, the taxpayer, to the tune of, millions per year being poured into these programs. And I go talk to people inside the Safe Park, and it is a hotbed of drug dealing, rape, prostitution,
So
and
for
they're
those who are
dragging
listening,
dead bodies out of there.
What is a safe park? Explain
Well, a
that.
safe park is the most Orwellian term on earth because it's the most dangerous park in town. And it's just the city goes in, buys or rents a piece of ground, flattens it out, throws gravel down, no running water, no sanitary services, no fire suppression, no separation, no access, egress for fire trucks, nothing. And then basically goes around and tells all the people who are living in a vehicle anywhere in town that if you want to continue living in your vehicle, you have to go to the safe park and you can't stay on the street. I agree that they shouldn't stay on the street, but we're basically, so there's one by my office.
Do we
It
have
is-
those in Chelan County?
They're in the city.
I'm going to sound really
Yeah,
ignorant.
They're in the
here.
city. There's two. There's one.
Yeah.
There's one just down here on the corner by the roundabout, and there's one on the south end by the drive-in.
It's
And
basically a solution for the RVs that were parked on
Yeah. All
city
over town?
parking. Yeah, but they
Right.
kind of had transitioned them and kind of consolidated them.
So the official rule on paper is no drugs and alcohol. The lived experience is that
You mean in that safe space
inside
area?
that area, yeah, you're supposed to not do drugs if you're inside there.
How's that
and
going?
yet, well, the homeless people that are living out in the encampments, ironically, won't go to the safe park because they fear violence, rape, and they can't be around that much drug abuse. So the lived experience, and this is why they keep pulling overdose dead people out of these safe parks. So this is very emblematic of how government works. They have a good intention, which is get people off the street,
Yeah.
but then their implementation is garbage, and you end up just exacerbating the problem.
Right.
So it's actually attracted more people to the valley, and now there's people coming here because they know that they won't get hassled as long as they're inside this fence. So I know this doesn't have to do with the building
No, that's
department,
fine.
but when you go back,
I actually want to get into the homeless situation here. at
well,
some
I was
point,
just pointing out how hard it is to make a legal
solution.
park for
Right.
we're for those people at home too. We're building data centers in Malaga now. And I talked to one of the contractors, and he's going to see 2,900 electricians visit this site because you've got the high voltage guys, the low voltage guys, and there's going to be 2,900 electricians visiting our valley in the next couple of years. Well, we are already short on housing, and I appreciate the construction, and I'm very pro-development. I'm glad they're building the Microsoft building. But this is going to add additional level of stress. So if you wanted to provide temporary housing, because I worked in the oil fields in North Dakota, we lived in these man camps and fields.
Yeah.
So I think it's perfectly fine and acceptable and moral and ethical for somebody to go out there and grade a field in Malaga
Yeah.
and put in a temporary RV park and let people stay there.
Yeah.
There's no code that's going to allow that. If there were homeless drug addicts, you can do it, and you can collect money for it. So this is just that
tension.
why is this okay and this is not okay?
Yeah. The double standard.
It just happens over and over again. And we see this, back to your question about the building department. I met yesterday, and I had a call yesterday, and I'm having a meeting with some ex-employees of the county. They have systematically driven out anyone who has a very positive attitude, who
Yes.
wants to help customers.
Yeah.
They are not welcome here. You're not one of the club.
I
Get
know
out.
some of them. Yeah,
And
they're gone.
there are 2 or 3 more that are on the cusp of walking out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Because how would you like to go to work, let's say at a shoe store, that hated your customers and was rude and nasty to your I'm not saying the people at the building department are rude and nasty. I'm saying that if you as a shoe store guy
Right.
was rude and nasty.
Right.
Like, if you're not doing the thing, why would you want to keep doing it?
Yeah.
And it's worse than it's ever been right now.
So let's talk about the poor scenario, not the
Yeah.
poor, the homeless scenario and I'm just becoming aware of this more myself. I went to Malaga to visit a friend, and I was like, wow, this is wild. So we have an increasing challenge with homeless people in the valley. As a commissioner, start with you, and I'd love to hear from you. Like, what's your thought on it, and what would be your approach to try to address it?
Okay, so I got interested in this and actually went down and interviewed all the people under the bridge that would talk to me, some on camera, some didn't want to be on camera. And the crowd under the bridge is different from the crowd that's on the Malaga Highway.
Okay.
The crowd on the Malaga Highway, there's one guy out there who I liken to like Huckleberry Finn.
Okay.
He's highly intelligent, well-spoken. He's been texting me, right? So he'll probably see this.
Okay.
And he just wants to be outside of society. And I personally don't see any problem with that. He
Yeah.
should find a little piece of ground somewhere, and if he wants to live in a tent, he should do that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't I don't have a problem with that. I met a lady who absolutely broke my heart because we're sitting there having a conversation and she's making toast on a little open fire, burning sticks from the ground. And her son is laying right next to us. His feet are sticking out of a tent. And he's gone in a fentanyl-induced, coma. And she said that he has cancer and he should have about 1.5 years to live. But he's probably going to overdose before that 1.5 years is even up. And so she's going to reenter society because she can't leave her son. She's not going to leave her son out in the street. And he refuses all forms of help, full stop. He's not going to do treatment. He's not interested. He's going to be high until he dies, and then it's over, and then she'll reenter society. I met another lady who was using the facilities at the train station, because I went there as well, for showering and stuff. And she used to have an apartment that she paid $475 a month for. The building sold, the rent went to $1,200, and she was forced out in the street. And again, clean, sober, intelligent, has a job, like just a cool lady. If you met her, you would, at a barbecue, you wouldn't know she was homeless, but she's living in the street. So there's these folks, but every one of those people told me that they cannot go to the facilities that we are paying for right now and use them, because when they arrive there, it's a hot mess of drugs and violence.
What facilities are those?
Well, specifically the rescue mission on the south end of town and the Safe Park.
Okay.
Yeah. They don't go to those places because they don't want to be there. Now, the folks under the bridge, on the other hand, for the most part, everybody I talk to is there by choice. And that might offend some people. I don't care. Everybody has choices in this world. And they are choosing welfare, because most of them get Social Security. They get general delivery at the post office, where they pick up their checks. Ironically, they make about the same as my dad, who's 80 years old and retired from welding. No, they get quite a bit of money on either various welfare programs and Social Security. And apparently, according to them, I haven't double checked this, being a drug addict qualifies you. Like, you could get on social programs, not because you're missing a limb, not because of something that happened to you, just because you are a drug addict. The drug addiction is the disease that qualifies you for the free money.
Is that a state thing or a county thing or a federal thing?
I'm still looking into it. I don't know. But they get the money at the post office. They go, and I've talked to people at the Postal Service. They've ran all kinds of run-ins, people refusing to leave, that don't have ID, wanting to pick up their checks and stuff. And when I talk to them, their interest is to stay on the street and to stay high. I said, what would it be like for you to clean up your life? What would it be like for you to get off the streets? I've had that life. I had a car payment. I had a job. I used to have to put my boots on and go to work every day. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested. And I said, so what would it take? Like, would you have to find your why? You got to find a reason, because I also know personally several folks that used to be in the streets addicted to drugs and are now very successful in life and just amazing people. And you would never know that they had a history in the streets. But they will tell you that it was not a program that got them out. They found a reason. They found a reason to go on. And when you have that why, you can overcome almost any how. I mean, if you, this is just a fact of life. When you put your mind to something and you truly believe it, you'll clean yourself up. So you ask me for a solution, I would say this. Every single program that's using a U.S. taxpayer's dollar, whether that's federal, state, or local, that is doing outreach, needs to start truly implementing true test, be clean, because the programs that are seeing success, the local private ones that are mostly funded through philanthropy, they require sobriety. You need to be 3 days clean and sober.
To get over.
Second you fall back, you get thrown out. So this puts you in an environment where everyone in there is going through the same thing, and they act as a support system for each other. Yeah. They're all clean. They're all sober. How rad would it be if I showed up and you two are there, you're clean, you're sober, and I'm on that journey with you. We can hold each other accountable. This is great. But if I roll in and you two are stoned out of your minds, and guess what? You guys have a little something for me. Now I'm high too. That's never going to change. That system's not going to work.
Yeah.
So step one, if it's getting tax dollars, clean and sober, full stop, no exceptions. And then what that'll do too is it'll get those poor folks that I met that deserve the resources off the street, and they can go in there and get what we are paying for.
Yeah.
That's the people we want to help.
Yeah.
And step 2, I hate to say it because our jail, I did a 3-hour tour of the jail and it is packed for sure. And it's getting sued every time somebody overdoses. One guy overdosed because he swallowed his stash and then it blew up in his guts 2 days later and he overdosed after he'd been sober for 2 days. And yet all this comes back on the county. So the taxpayer is constantly being held responsible to pay for something that they didn't do. And so that system's got to end too. That if you OD in jail, if you OD period in the hands of an officer or in jail from something that you ingested, I'm really sorry, but the taxpayers don't owe you millions of dollars.
Yeah,
that should not be a thing. And then I would just arrest them, because where I grew up, if you were high and running around the street, you got thrown in an abandoned water tank. The village elders didn't take you to a court. They didn't give you 24 hours to clean up. They didn't.
One way to do it.
You put you on a list and let you go the next day. You go in a water tank. Didn't have water and it was empty.
Right.
And that's where you stayed until you're sober. And the very next time that they see you on the street high, you go straight back in. I watched this documentary yesterday on the Sinaloa cartel. They have a 3 strikes rule.
Yeah.
Catch you high once, beat you up. Catch you high twice, beat you up. Catch you high a 3rd time, you're dead.
That's the cartel?
That's the cartel. The Sinaloa cartel has 0 drug tolerance.
Yeah.
The Sinaloa cartel has a 0 drug policy. They catch you high 3 times. And I'm not saying that we need to do that here. I'm just saying,
enforce the law.
You up. You cannot be high in the street. Go to jail.
Yeah, well, I have
because
law
in
enforcement
jail
buddies,
you will sober up.
Yeah, I have law enforcement buddies that they don't hardly make the arrest anymore because they won't get prosecuted.
They won't even let them in.
They won't even let them in. Yeah, so they're breaking the law, but there's no way to enforce it. Okay.
Sorry to hog all the time.
No, that's good. That's good. So homeless challenge in the county. How would you go about solving it as a commissioner?
Yeah, it's a big challenge in the county as well as the city. I think I want to commend both the city of Wenatchee and city East Wenatchee. They've taken some steps. They've created some revenue streams. I believe that they've helped lead on this issue in part with the RV park.
Is that what you were talking about? What they've done, like Jimmy's property down here,
just to disperse it, because it doesn't. It's just because it's out of sight a bit doesn't mean the issue's resolved, of course. But when there is intensity of homelessness in local parks and other areas, in residential areas, it becomes more of an increased problem. But also the pallet shelters is another thing, another step that the cities have taken. One of the challenges is that people want to live that lifestyle, just like that. And I know this because a couple years ago, there was a huge homeless encampment near the George Seller Bridge. And I don't know if you remember that, but they were able to kind of hang out on DOT property, and that's the Washington State Department of Transportation. So they kind of, and the state was not able to kind of transition them out at that time until they started to throw trash on the railroad. And the Burlington Northern Santa Fe has a lot of power in this area. And once that happened, the state got mobilized. And I'm a member of the Washington State Senate Transportation Committee. And so I stayed in close communication with the WashDOT regional director as to what they were planning and then the wraparound services. And the state really went to huge efforts. And I can't remember how many people they were relocating, but to Flint's point, a very small number of people chose the services that the state provided and set all up, and most of them just moved on. But there's a lot to unpack, because I would say with our homelessness here, and it's different across the U.S., I'd say a portion is related to housing unaffordability, but I believe the vast majority is mental health issues and substance abuse issues. And so in order to resolve those issues, you really do need to have options for those people to get clean and sober. Otherwise, they're overwhelming local law enforcement and firefighters, EMS. I met with the firefighters. I'm endorsed by our local firefighters, and they shared that. A lot of the calls we go on are these calls. And so you have to kind of look at some of those things holistically. I also think you have, to the best extent possible, try to identify and separate issues that may be attracting visitor homeless.
Okay, so that was a question, because our homeless population, do you know this? Is it local people, or are they being shipped here, or are they coming here?
I don't necessarily know being shipped here, but and this is an interesting question for Christians as well, because some of the ministries may be attracting homeless here. And so my opinion is we should not be attracting homeless here, but we should be taking care of our community homeless.
Yes.
And it's a big issue. I think we need to approach it with more compassion, frankly, because, you know, you have to kind of put yourself in a situation. If you see a homeless person and you don't recognize that person, oh, that person's homeless.
Yeah.
But what if it were your neighbor's daughter? And in the case of me, I was driving down South Wenatchee Avenue and I saw a homeless person, and I did a double take and took a closer look. It was actually someone I graduated with from Wenatchee High School. And, you know, it's very expensive to get people clean.
So that's a local person?
Yeah, we need more of those
here.
resources. Otherwise, we're overwhelming law enforcement.
Yep.
But we need to keep people safe too, so to the extent possible. And we have all 4 seasons in the Wenatchee Valley, so it gets really cold. And so how to approach it
what would you do? What could you do as a commissioner? What would the steps be?
We received, Chelan County received a grant for a drug and alcohol center from the state of Washington. And Representative Steele was very involved in helping to secure that. I was monitoring that as a legislator. I think that's a good step. And if we can get people the treatment they need to get them clean and provide more wraparound services with community organizations, either nonprofit or faith-based organizations, to get them the services that they need, also continue to increase the housing supply as best we can. We have a lot of challenges with housing, and I can't pretend to have all the answers. We have a beautiful, to your point, a beautiful place that we live in. A lot of people are moving over from Western Washington. A lot of people are moving up from California. California just recently lost a congressional seat because their population is not growing as fast as others. So they're bringing people here, bringing their politics probably too. But we may never, no matter what we do in Chelan County, be able to keep up with, let alone get in front of the housing challenges. But housing is a factor with homeless too, but making sure that services are there to get people clean and sober is ultimately what we need. But we can't be attracting people as well, because that's going to overwhelm us.
So what attracts that?
Well,
those people.
I accidentally killed our hummingbirds at home.
Okay.
I put out a hummingbird feeder, and they hung out, and they enjoyed it all summer. And I enjoyed seeing them, so I never took down the hummingbird feeder. And next thing you know, it's the middle of winter, it's 11 degrees out, the wind's blowing 30 miles an hour, and the hummingbirds died because they never left that feeder. I put that feeder out, and they never left. So I think, to kind of build on Brad's point, if Wenatchee is a place where you go get arrested for being high in a park, these people are not bolted down. They don't have any roots here. To answer your question about whether or not they're coming in or not, they will. 8 out of 10 people I talked to were bust here. Specifically, one guy that I was talking to, and we had to interrupt our conversation and go around the corner to continue it because the police showed up, and he has warrants out for his arrest. And I said, well, if you got warrants out for your arrest, you should probably you
should get arrested.
You should get arrested or what? And he goes, well, I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried. He said, I was bussed in here. The Department of Corrections of Spokane Valley paid for my ticket. My probation officer told me as long as I stay in Wenatchee, I'll be fine. And that was...
You're kidding me.
No, it's directly straight out of his mouth. He said, they told me to come here. They told me to stay here. And so they already know that in Wenatchee, you're not going to get put in jail. Like these things. So the other areas are recognizing what we have going, and they go, there's resources. So as long as the bird feeders are open, there's always going to be more birds than food.
So what's a bird feeder? A safe space?
It's a free handouts, man. So if you open you think about this local coffee shop that everybody likes, the one that gives away coffee when they open up. They open up and it's free for the first couple of days.
Well, I don't know, man.
Every time
I gotta go check that out.
Dutch Brothers. When Dutch Brothers opens, everything's free for the first couple of days. And they have to when the one on Grant Road opened, they had to have flaggers out there because the line of cars waiting to get free coffee was clogging up Grant Road, trying to get off the road and get in there to get a free cup of coffee. Believe me, when you make resources free with no strings attached, that is why they're here. He goes, look, I know that they're going to come through on Thursday at 12. I was down there on a Wednesday. He goes, tomorrow I'm going to pick up the things I want to keep and move them out of the way. And the city's going to come through with a backhoe and a fire hose, and they're going to wash all this out for me. They're going to take away my trash and clean up my mess.
Wow.
And then I'm going to go right back again. So if Wenatchee is the place where you get arrested if you're high in public, it will end. We don't even have to arrest that many of them, because you arrest 5 or 6, the rest of them are going to find the next bus out of here.
It's kind of like Apple Blossom. You start ratcheting down an Apple Blossom, the parties go away.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
And I realize we kind of went over the building department earlier. I do want to just specifically make a shout out to the city of East Wenatchee. That place and the city of Entiat also. The city of East Wenatchee, by the way, you can get a permit for an apartment complex super fast and easy. Their building department was one person, and now I don't even know if they really have a person, because they just send it all out to consultants. Yeah, just super quick and easy. And that's another solution, by the way. Yeah.
So back to the thing you set up, the drug and alcohol center that we got money for. Would you consider that a hummingbird feeder?
Yeah, I would say what is the success rate of a center exactly like it? And if you're telling me that you can send 100 people in there and 6 of them get better and 94 of them end up back in the street, it was so fascinating talking to the jailer. He goes, when they're on the street, they don't want help. When we arrest them, all they want is help. And please, I don't want this life anymore. Please, let's let me out. I'll be good. And then they'll release them into the custody of a state-funded drug and alcohol facility. And so when they let them out the front door, the drug and alcohol counselor is there to meet them. They walk right around them as if they don't exist, because they can't put hands on them. And they go, bye, and they're right back in the road again. So this goes back to what we said earlier. You have to want to get better. Like, if you really were in jail and you actually wanted to get better, and that drug and alcohol counselor was there, you would go right to him and say, let's roll, let's go to the place.
The resources are already there.
The resources are there, yeah.
So I'm trying to hear a distinction in how you guys would approach it. Maybe there isn't, or maybe there is, but I'm hearing you say you'd start with in more law enforcement. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, tough love.
Tough love. And would that be different from you, or are you saying the same thing?
Well, that might be a possibility, but I actually disagree with Flint, and I don't even know that the law enforcement community would support that.
In relationship to the drug alcohol center?
Well, I think the drug and alcohol center is a resource for our community, not just homeless. And we have a lot of fentanyl, sadly, just ripping through this community right now. And it's almost like cancer or Parkinson's or some of the things we talked about. Where
I talked with a funeral director,
every family,
and they're like, it's an epidemic. It's hundreds of bodies a month that nobody even knows about.
Why doesn't the state use Ibogaine? Has anybody ever, if you had a family member who was hooked on fentanyl, you can cure them by sending them to an Ibogaine clinic outside this country.
Never heard of it in my life.
It's a plant. It's similar to 5-MeO DMT or psilocybin or something. I mean, they treat you with it, but Ibogaine has like an 80% success rate. If you were a fentanyl addict and you went and had some Ibogaine treatments at an Ibogaine clinic, these are real businesses. Anybody can Google it. They're all over Costa Rica. People fly in, do the Ibogaine treatments, come back. 80% of them never go back to drugs again.
Really? I've never heard of that before.
It's dirt cheap.
But I tell you what, to keep it
but the state won't do it.
Full circle to some of the things we talked about being parents and things in the beginning. I tell my kids a lot, hey kids, don't do drugs. I mean, they just whatever, dad, whatever. But there's so many stories where parents out there, and maybe viewers or listeners to your podcast, if you have a chance to talk to your son or daughter about staying clean and not starting drugs, don't do it. And even fentanyl, people think they're taking other drugs.
You do have the conversation.
Have the conversation. Don't do it.
If you have a chance to have the conversation, don't do it.
No, I'm sorry. Thanks for correcting me. But and
I think what he meant to say was
people who
don't encourage your kids to take drugs.
People who, from the coroner who gave a report to the county commissioners recently, a lot of the people who are dying of the drug overdoses of fentanyl don't realize they're taking fentanyl.
That's right.
They're thinking they're taking another drug. And so I'm really glad we've done a deep dive in this. It's a huge issue. We have a lot of other challenging issues in Chelan County too. One of the things that's interesting, as serving as a county commissioner, a lot of people don't really want to talk about the county budget and keeping the county budget balanced and aligning the revenues and the expenditures. But that's a key part of the county commissioner's job. I think housing is an issue. Wildfire is probably our biggest issue in Chelan County.
Let's do that. Just like tick off top 4 to 6 priorities or problems that you think exist in the county that you would want to spend time addressing.
Yeah.
You ripped off a couple.
Well, for me, I think the most important thing is to continue to grow and diversify the county economy. When you grew up in Wenatchee, I think, or no?
Born in Wenatchee, grew up in Leavenworth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the area, agriculture is kind of like our number one economic sector.
Yep.
And right now, I would say, well, you got agriculture, hydropower, outdoor recreation, healthcare sector is big.
Yep.
Tourism. The growing technology sector with Microsoft and some others. But we need to continue to grow and diversify the county economy so that we can keep our budget balanced. Sales tax is a big revenue stream for the county, and property taxes as well. So if we can continue to grow and diversify, we can maintain county services, keep our budget balanced, have the continuity with staff that is needed in those positions. If we can add value into the county properties, and then we can help mitigate people's growing residential property taxes, which is a huge issue.
Yeah.
And
let's talk about that.
Yeah. So it's interesting. As a state senator, the question I received the most about as far as taxes were property taxes.
Yep.
But only a portion of the property taxes, about 30%, are to the state. The state receives most of its revenue from sales tax, business and occupation tax, and other things. When people look at their property tax bill, the way I describe it is like a pie or a pizza, and certain slices go to different areas. The state has a portion, no doubt. I wish the state didn't have any property tax at all, so I could say we have nothing to do with it. But there's city, there's county, there's library district, port district, fire, EMS, school levy, school bond.
Schools,
schools are probably, So really the property taxes are a collection of all those things. But if you can add, say, a group of new homes, or in the case of Microsoft, a bunch of additional properties that have value, or hotels, that has a way of taking the fixed property tax burden for Chelan County and spreading it out over more paying entities. So it kind of, it mitigates the property tax increases, which I think is important because a lot of people...
Is that a strategy or an approach that a commissioner can implement?
Absolutely. We need to work closely with the regional port. I think the regional port is doing good work on economic development with not just Microsoft, but other things and residential properties and others to, have more value into Chelan County. One of the challenges, though...
What do you say when you mean more value?
More properties that are property tax paying entities.
Okay, so for example, development, building more.
But proper development.
You're not saying create more value in the property I already own.
Well, if you wanted to add to it, but one thing that's interesting about Chelan County, and this may be different across the United States, but surprisingly, 87% of Chelan County is in public ownership. Only 13% is in private ownership, and then we have a lot of geographical considerations and natural boundaries, mountains, rivers is the reason we love living here. But there's certain setbacks and other riparian areas and other things. But it's really challenging we have to be thoughtful.
There's only so much flat ground to build on.
Yeah, and we have to be thoughtful about how we can do that to grow the county economy. Housing is an issue. Wildfire is an issue. Wildfire might be another question, but there's a lot of challenges with wildfire, both with the initial attack as well as the ongoing strategic issues with wildfire, because we have vast amounts of federal lands in Chelan County, a huge amount of U.S. Forest Service lands, and they haven't been managing their lands for decades, and now is creating a lot of collateral impacts for Chelan County residents. So a whole host of things, but I'm interested in all those things. I'm not kind of any particular issue. I'm more of, I feel like I'm the person who could help represent the broad interest of Chelan County. And these may be the issues today, maybe 2 or 4 years from now, depending on which one of us is in the position. There may be other issues that we're not anticipating.
Other problems.
Yeah.
Super helpful.
Yeah.
Your top list of 4 or 6 challenges.
Yeah, I'll just kind of piggyback right off of that. So,
interesting. Anything you heard that you disagreed with?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the Port District, has had some great opportunities to offload the properties that they do own, including to myself and my partners. We spent $750,000 chasing a family fun center in the lineage buildings. And as we all know, as long as those properties remain on the books of the port and they snap up anything and everything they get an opportunity to buy, it comes off the tax roll. And as long as it sits in their custody, it pays no taxes. And then they get opportunities to put those back out into the public, and they don't always take them. So I know Chelan was turned down for his offer of the lineage building because he was going to put a manufacturing facility in there. What happened to us is we spent $750,000 of our own money on engineering and design, and they chose to put the building back on the market and offer it to the general public while we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on it, trying to turn it into a family fun center. And had they just sold it to us, we could have paid them the $2 million they wanted for the structure. That would have been immediately back on the tax roll, and today you'd have a family fun center downtown. Instead, the direction they chose to go was to retain ownership of it, and now are going to go ahead and spend millions and millions of dollars in core and shell improvements to then go out and rent it to a brewery. So now instead of a fun center, you're going to get a brewery downtown. Right. And the whole time, your tax dollars just being wasted into the wind in this process that could have been easy. As far as forest fires go, follow the money. A fire that is out does not pay. A fire that is burning pays. Yeah. So when these forest fires are babies, and I'm not saying anything disparaging towards any local firefighters. So local firefighters, when your house catches on fire, they don't make a dime more, whether it's out or burning, so they show up right away and they put it out. And the same with the county. Like when there's a fire and the county has custody of it, boom, they put that thing out. And you can see this over and over again through our local firefighting. But when a forest fire breaks out on national forest land, how long does it take to respond? They let it burn. The last two major fires in Chelan that caused massive destruction and cost $50, $60, $70 million a piece to put out were let burn, and they let them get bigger, and they let them get bigger. And the whole time they said, we can't bomb it out. And then in the end, when it finally gets up to Stehekin and they've cashed $60 million worth of checks, they go, now we'll put it out. We'll bomb it out. Well, I thought you couldn't bomb it out. Now think about all the erosion that's going to happen. And to Brad's point, they're not taking care of the woods. They're not doing the thing.
Who's they?
Forest Service.
Forest Service.
And this is an area where Flint and I agree. And I think there is a distinction because we have, when wildland fires start on state or county private lands locally, we see a significant,
more aggressive
initial attack.
Awesome.
Yep.
And I commend our local firefighters, the State Department of Natural Resources. There's a lot less bureaucracy.
They knock them out.
When fires occur on lands of federal jurisdiction, like we did seen with the Pioneer Fire, it does appear as if maybe because they are responsible for dispersing the initial attack. I think we need stronger initial attack. I think we need more air assets. In particular, I think we need more air assets provided from our federal government to mitigate the threats on our federal lands because we have so much and because they have gone untreated. I'd like to see those aircraft pre-positioned during fire season at Pangbourne Airport and in Moses Lake, and have those available to us. Now, when the Western United States and British Columbia also has wildfires, the federal government has a way of like, oh, we're short on resources. Right. Well, then we all need more resources, because as a taxpayer, I would rather spend more money in the first 24 or 48 hours being able to put out the fires soon after they start than the massive amounts of taxpayer dollars that I spend trying to manage the fires once they get burning. And really, they don't fight the fires at that point. They just sort of manage them, steer them,
watch it go.
And then eventually, once the heavy rains occur or the snow occurs in the late fall, then those fires are put out. The problem with Chelan County is there's massive amounts of collateral impacts to that. Loss of air quality, tourism, people are threatened home, economic value. And now a lot of the private homeowners insurance policies are being canceled or rates are going up. And so when it's
rippling into the other parts.
A lot of ripple effects, collateral damage. And all the while, there's a lot of impacts to wildlife, a lot of long-term
erosion in
damage.
the lake.
Absolutely.
Imagine how muddy that. I mean, how
So-
much mud's going to come off that slope and go into Lake Chelan with dead trees in it, and boaters and everything's going to be impacted.
So what we need to do is be able to, over time, make investments. Well, if the U.S. Forest Service isn't going to do it, then the state and the county are actually beginning to do it, to clear out the small diameter trees that are overgrown in
Prescribed
there,
burn.
clear out the underbrush, prescribe fire on the landscape, really create an environment where the U.S. Forest Service lands can better withstand natural causes of wildfire, which a lightning strike shouldn't necessarily cause a whole hillside
equal
to,
catastrophic fire.
Yeah.
So you agree with that? You're
I
going down your list
want
of
them to do their
stuff in the
job.
county.
I mean, that we're look at the amount of money that gets spent in the woods for the amount of service that we get. The roads are junk. I mean, no, but this is just kind of emblematic of everything that the federal level, you know, both in domestically and abroad, the way that, it's the people are absolutely getting fleeced, and there's not a lot of accountability.
So I think the answer is more aircraft pre-positioned during fire season, less bureaucracy on initial attacks, and a more swift response in the first 24, 48 hours on the federal lands when fires occur.
Yep. So back to you as far as the top issues in the county. We heard some of Brad's. You said fire. You were piggybacking off him, things you agreed with.
I believe that government should be small and efficient. So the things that I'm going to care about the most are roads, transportation, police, fire, and efficiency in government. I just want the basics. I don't want a bird study or a squirrel study or more bureaucracy in my life. I want it to be the absolute minimum size that it can be, the minimum effective dose of government, because I don't know if you've ever read much by Henry David Thoreau, whether Walden or Duty of Civil Disobedience, some of those good books, and he talks about how society kind of needs to have some organized structure and to hear its din, right? So we do need government in our lives, because having grown up in areas where there's no trust in the system, there's no trust in the law. I think the last election that Honduras had, I want to say like 17 people were executed before they named a winner.
Wow.
So you need to know that your property rights are protected. You need to know that there's safety going outside. So, and that when you drive down the road, your suspension's not going to get ripped out by a giant pothole. And I think that all in all, Chelan County is doing a pretty good job, but I'm afraid that we're going to lose it. I think we're riding that edge a little bit. I know, like you started the conversation off, a lot of builders have just decided to move on.
I got buddies who moved states. Like, they're gone. I
only want to build in East Wenatchee from now on. From coming from my own project managers, please don't take any more work over here. My wife's family, the 6 families packed up from Seattle and moved to Texas. All of them together as a coordinated effort, all of them. And these are great people for the city of Seattle to have there. And they lost them all to go live in Texas, where it's 120 degrees. There's no public land. So yes, I just want to focus on essential roles of government. And to Brad's point, the county is going to face some bumps in the next year or two, because property values that we're living on right now are 22 values, the 23 values. I don't know if you guys know, I sit on Board of Equalization. So if you have a tax issue, you would come on that board that you would come to talk about the property value.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. So we heard a record number of cases last year. And because values were so high at the end of in 22, and now the assessments are based on the end of 23. And at the end of 23, I know in my company, we were discounting houses like crazy to get them to move. Interest rates were rising. So a lot of people's value that they received in their notice has actually slipped and gone down. Well, to Brad's point, this translates directly to lower revenue for the county, and they're already facing a deficit that they're aware of. They're in the middle of budgeting. But also want to say, if you go, well, inflation will carry the retail cost of goods up, and therefore will recover it in sales tax. That's not true, because people can't spend money they don't have.
Right.
Income didn't go up, only expenses have gone up. So you still have the total income in the county remain the same. It's just that we just get to buy a lot less stuff. And this is what's referred to as stagflation, is the price of things is going up, but the number of units sold is not. So this actually causes less people in hotel rooms, less widgets manufactured, less cars being sold.
Yep.
And that's why we're sitting on so much inventory right now and people aren't buying stuff, even though the cost is going up. And you get stuck in a situation where you can't drop the cost because the dollars aren't worth anything.
Yep.
So it just leads to people leaving the market. And if you think we have a housing problem right now, give it a couple of years. Building permits for single family residents, we're doing about 60% of what we did a couple of years ago. So people are backing out. I'm backing out. Everybody's backing out. And we have a serious problem coming down the pipe, and it's going to take somebody willing to make the tough calls. In 2008, we didn't have a chance. We didn't have a choice. Values dropped. Revenue at the county dried up. And the only answer was, hey, guys, there's no money, go home.
So what is the answer to the local housing crisis, you think?
Get out of the way. Get the government out of the way. Allow builders to build small, allow them to build efficiently, stop drowning us. And the health department right now is about ready to hit you in the face again next year. They're adding a new septic rule that the last thing I heard was they're going to run septics up another $10,000, $15,000 a house. That last round of energy codes was poison.
Yep.
Absolute poison.
Yep.
And it just continues to get worse. And Chelan County will say, well, you know, it came from Olympia. We have to do it. Why aren't the rules the same in Douglas County? That's in Washington State. How come? Now, I understand that Stevens County doesn't have to follow growth management, but in Stevens County, you don't need a building permit to build yourself a house. You can just go build yourself a house.
What?
As soon as you cross the border, North Idaho voted out their building department completely. They closed it. They got rid of it. In Wyoming, where I go hunting all the time, there's cabins and buildings and all kinds of stuff that I enjoy every day that were not engineered. And I don't feel any less safe sleeping in those buildings.
You're saying county commissioners can vote out some of the
No,
energy
we're
code
not in
craziness?
Chelan County because of the Growth Management Act. But no,
Okay.
we absolutely get to pick. Like there was this rumor in Chelan County that if you had a house that was 3,600 square feet or larger, that you needed a fire suppression system.
Right.
This was never put into code. And do you know how many people spent 20,
Bro, I've
30
got
grand?
buddies that like had
Yeah.
inspectors hold their feet to the fire. You don't get
Yeah.
occupancy until you put up
100%.
frickin'
I have a friend who they
fire
made go
suppression,
back
man.
and drill his house full of holes and add a fire suppression system because he put an ADU on his property and he's on acreage. So the ADU is separated from his main house by a long ways. The first they tried to get him by saying his roof was too big. And then he measured it and proved that it wasn't. Then they said, no, we're counting square footage of floor space. So then he proved his floor space also didn't break the threshold. So then they said, well, we have to count your lean-to that you park your tractor under that has a dirt floor
No.
to push you over the limit, to make him go back and drop 20, 30 grand on his house, to drill it all full of holes. This is evil. This is wrong.
Yeah.
For a government agency to sit there and tell you have to drill your house full of holes. This guy's trying to make it in life with a house full of kids.
Yep.
And he had to drill his house full of holes and spend tens of thousands of dollars because of a mistake made at the county. And it
Yep.
happens every day.
Yep.
And there's no recourse.
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh no! One thing
Get
I was going
fired
to
up,
say. No, yeah. And
If we get out Flint's way, build us more houses.
it's fun to
Jeez.
have a good exchange of ideas. I
Yeah.
think also Chelan County should kind of think maybe a little differently, a little more outside the box on some of the things. Now, I've partnered with the city of Leavenworth and city of Chelan on some of their unique housing things. They have housing trusts where, they housing trust owns the underlying property and leases it out, but the homeowners actually own the buildings themselves. So there's a way to kind of get into the market at a lower price and get on the housing scale. But as your house appreciates, they can kind of move up the housing ladder a little bit. But one of the areas that I think we should think about are two biggest areas in Chelan County that have housing challenges: Leavenworth and Chelan. Basically, the people who provide the essential services in those communities can't afford to live there.
Right.
So I think there might be still some
My parents had to sell it because they owned the home for 38 years but couldn't afford the property taxes.
Yeah,
My dad
and that
sold
too. You
same
get
way.
aged out. And sadly, I've heard from a lot of people in agriculture who they're second and third generations and can't afford the house they grew up in or their parents grew up in because of the property taxes. But when it comes to Leavenworth and in the Lake Chelan area, I think we need to look creatively at some other opportunities that are sort of within striking distance. If you're familiar with Chelan Falls, which is an area just near the BB Bridge, you could bring in some infrastructure and do some really positive things to get some affordable housing, some middle income type housing. And if the county were to partner with Link Transit, which already runs up to Chelan and Manson, then you could, for the service industry and some of the school employees and others in Chelan, travel from Chelan Falls to Chelan proper, and similarly, perhaps, although maybe not as desirable for the Leavenworth market, look at Dryden, which is not far. Some people look at Peshastin, but Peshastin has the bridge there that creates a bit of a bottleneck. Highway 2 has some challenges between Dryden and Leavenworth, and maybe we could look at widening some of Highway 2. But if we created incentives with infrastructure for private sector to build units and nice homes in the Dryden area, that could be close enough to Leavenworth. One of the challenges, too, when we think about affordable housing, a lot of growth is occurring in Entiat for Wenatchee and Chelan, but that creates a lot of transportation challenges on Highway 97A or whatever, and that's already a dangerous area. So we need to think creatively, think outside the box, do everything we can to bump up the housing supply, but also think about some areas that haven't been tapped into, that if the county gets infrastructure, maybe create an environment that's desirable for builders. Because I just don't think, to some of Flint's points, I mean, especially in a community like Chelan, with all the state and regulations and some of the local requirements, that people are going to be able to build a house that's actually affordable for people. And so you have to look at other areas. And I think Dryden and Chelan Falls might be two potential opportunities in the future for Chelan County.
What do you think about that?
Well, I agree that the city of Entiat's wonderful, by the way. Amazing. They're so easy to deal with, and they want housing solutions. They can't wait to get more stuff going in there. And if you want to go build something, build it in Entiat.
It's a long way. It's a long way from Wenatchee and Chelan, though.
The issue that I take with, and I have nothing against the subsidized affordable housing. It's fine. Most of that money is given freely. There's a lot of philanthropic efforts that go into that, and I applaud the work that they do. The issue is that if you buy a $450,000 house that is subsidized to the tune of $200,000, first and foremost, in order to qualify for that house, you're incentivized that you literally have to be poor to qualify for it. Then when you go to leave it, you're only allowed to capture 3% market appreciation. So if the market went up 10%, 8%, 9% a year, there's absolutely no incentive to ever move out of that house. The other problem is that every single structure you build requires about a $200,000 subsidy. So by the math, it's just limited. I mean, if you had $1 million, you can build 5 doors. There's this other solution. That's the get out of the way solution. So in 1945, when everybody came home from World War II, we needed a lot of housing. These dams were being built, highways were going in, and the way we plotted land back then is the same. So if you look around South Wenatchee, around the bridge, if you look in Chelan, anywhere behind City Hall, just go on a GIS map or Onyx map, and you'll see the lots are like 35 feet wide. They're tiny. And the houses are generally between 800 feet and 1,000 feet. They don't have a garage. You park in the street. And all this stuff is like considered bad by today's standards. We want a 70-foot wide lot with a 25-foot deep front setback, 2 cars off the street minimum with a 2-car garage. And like, so this is a $500,000-$600,000 house. Why on earth are we having such trouble just building these little tiny 800 square foot houses? And sorry, but like profit makes the world go round. I guarantee you the person that built this water bottle and sold it to me had the profit motive in mind when they designed it. And they said, I'm going to build the best water bottle I can for the price, and the market will either take it or they will not. And that's the same with everything on this table. So you can profitably build 800 square foot 2-bedroom houses and sell them to the public at $250,000.
You're kidding me.
No, it's easy. It's all day long. The structure won't cost you more than $100,000. You'd only be $75,000 in the land, the sidewalk, the infrastructure, the sewer, the build out, and that leaves money for the realtor, the bank, the investors, the builders. It's all in there. The problem is the only place where I can do that right now is high density residential. So then the other thing I'm competing with for that same piece of land would be a high rise apartment. And the city of Wenatchee is taking steps right now to alleviating the density issue. But because planning commissions in the past have not accepted these small homes, we backed ourselves into a corner, and now the state's coming through and saying everybody gets an ADU, right? In some cases 2 ADUs. And so this pendulum swings from we could have solved the problems ourselves. Now that window has closed, and now every house in the city can have 2 ADUs, and you don't even have to have street frontage. You can access it through a walking path easement down the side yard. So again, government gets in the way, creates a problem, offers a solution without thinking the consequences all the way through. And all we need to do is open up. How many houses could I sell at $250?
A lot.
Oh my goodness. I've talked to the banks. There's laundry lists of people waiting right now that can't wait. It's $2,000 a month, the same as renting an apartment.
So you're saying you could build a house for
and sell it to you
$250,000
for $250 on land.
If what?
If I was legally allowed to do so.
And what's standing in that way is
Zoning.
Yeah. That is under
Here's what
the
I need. I need sewer. So this UGA. And I need lot sizes to be allowed to go down to 35 feet in medium density and low density zoning. Because right now, if you zone it high density where this is allowed, because people are going to go look at the code and say, well, you can do 35-foot wide lots. You can in high density. So what I need that to be extended to other density levels where an apartment complex would not be allowed, because as soon as you allow the apartment complex, that land goes to $500,000 an acre.
That's right.
So no apartment complex allowed here.
Yeah.
But if you do a subdivision, we're going to let you cut those lots in half, down to half size. And then I'm telling you, this house is, don't get any visions of grandeur. This is a
it's a home.
It's a home. It's the home I moved into when we moved to Wenatchee in 2005.
Yeah.
It was 800 square feet, had 2 bedrooms, has 1 bathroom.
Yeah.
And it has a kitchen with 2 8-foot pieces of countertop in it.
Yeah.
That's the whole house. It's heated with baseboards. And I can just see people now going, oh my God, baseboards. You can't put an air conditioning system in it. Thank you to the state.
Yeah.
So the minute I put an air conditioning system in it, I have to follow this new energy code.
Yeah.
But if I don't air condition it, then I don't need to follow the energy code.
Yeah.
I can build the whole house on 4 credits. That's a water heater and a blower door test.
That's wild.
But you can air condition it after I sell it.
There you go.
And you can air condition it because I'm going to frame a hole in the wall for a PTAC unit. Those are the ones you've experienced in a hotel.
Yep.
And it just
right there.
It slides in the wall. You can buy it on Amazon for $700. And there's nothing illegal about that.
Yeah.
You can put a PTAC unit in your house after the fact for $700.
Huh. I mean, the house we're building, they went up $30,000 July 1st with this new energy code stuff. It's crazy.
How do you like the way the county handled the implementation of the new energy code?
Oh my goodness. It's wild.
That's criminal.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're running out of time. He's got to go to a meeting. So let's do this. This conversation has only raised more questions for me. So so many more to get into.
It's been really fun.
It's been awesome. I
so
love
much
this
to get
format.
into. So I'm really grateful for both of you guys. Both of you,
Likewise.
my observation, very intelligent, care a lot about our community, and I'm grateful for both of you. If we had more time, I would get into where did you hear distinctions from what you would do from what he said, and vice versa?
Yeah.
Because I think there's some middle ground here, and then I think there are some very distinct distinctions. I would say some, but then they might not be fair. But I think generally,
both of us trying to solve a problem. I don't think there's any disagreement on what problems we see. We're just going to solve them
a little differently.
But I commend anyone, Brad, for running and for being willing to step into that gap and handle those, because you're not going to make everybody happy.
Yeah.
Neither am I.
Yeah. And one of the things too is being in these positions, you have to be open-minded and be willing to be collaborative. One of the things I've learned as a legislator in Olympia is I have an idea, other people have an idea, and my idea may not be the best and theirs may not be the best, but in the end, with the exchange of ideas, you can get to a point where you get a solution that was better than what any of you thought of. So
absolutely.
I think what Flint is describing with his houses kind of reminds me of my thought maybe perhaps on cottage homes and some of those other codes. But maybe we could do in Chelan Falls what Flint's talking about, partner with Link Transit and get people building equity rather than throwing their money away with rent.
Yes. I don't want to see more apartments built because part of it, not just a clientele.
You don't get on the
thing.
ladder.
What's that?
You don't get on the ladder.
People
you leave with no money.
The water lines levels going up. You got to get your boat in the water.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or it's going to go up and you can't get in. I'm thinking about my kids.
You're going to be priced out. Now,
that's right.
Apartment living is only good if you're doing it by your choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you have
Yes.
to be in an apartment, you're never really going to be able to
Yeah,
save up for that down
temporary,
payment because
you're
your
traveling.
rent goes up.
That's right.
Yep.
And the housing values go up, and
Well,
you'll
plus,
never
I
be able to make that switch and build
And
equity.
an entry-level home in an apartment should overlap on price. Right now, there's a gap.
I agree.
Apartments 2,000, entry-level homes 3,000.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable. We need.
Well,
they need to line
And
up.
interest rates, federal interest rates now are starting to tick down, but
Yeah.
I mean the interest rates too. It
Oh,
just put
it's-
it out of reach completely.
It's
Well, and
unbelievable.
just so we're clear, the $250,000 house would have a $2,000 month payment, including principal, interest, taxes, and insurance at today's rates.
So
before they went down.
If the county bureaucracy got out of the way, builders
Mm-hmm.
in our town could do that.
There's so many projects that we walk away from, and I know so many guys that are walking away from projects left and right.
Yeah.
You know, you go out to Three Lakes. That's a chip seal road with no shoulders, and it's been there since the 70s. And I doorbelled that community, and it's a wonderful community.
Yeah.
You can't build it today.
Yeah.
It's illegal.
And I think that's what people should hear is that we're not victims. We're not handcuffed. There are things that people we're voting in office could do tomorrow to remove challenges to get solution-oriented men and women to build solutions for us.
Yeah.
But we got to wrap up here because I want to honor your
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So here's just this quick. This will be fun. Word association: agree, disagree in terms of like what you would line it up with. Bureaucracy or privacy? More of it.
Privacy,
Privacy.
Bigger government, smaller government.
The small.
smaller,
Small.
leaner,
Leaner.
Yeah.
Process or progress?
progress.
Is this supposed to be this easy?
I feel like I'm doing well here.
Yeah.
So both of you are on the record. I just want to make sure, like,
Yeah.
smaller government,
I made
less
a little
bureaucracy.
plaque.
Yeah.
I made a little plaque for myself down at the trophy store. And it's to sit on my desk if I get elected and it faces me. And if I don't win, I'm going to give it to Brad. And this is what it says.
With the mug, remember you promised me
Want
a mug?
that coffee cup. So it says decrease bureaucracy,
Yeah.
increase freedom,
Yeah.
decrease waste, and increase efficiency.
Yes.
And it's like a name plaque thing, but it's meant to face the commissioner, not the public.
Yep.
And every vote that you take, you should look at that thing. I will look at that thing and go, is the thing I'm doing
Yep.
accomplishing these 4 rules that I was sent here to do, that I promised? That's the only campaign promise I'm making right there.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
You know, I was
Yeah,
going to
that's
say
good.
too, part of this job too is you have to be willing to be a courageous leader, and I believe Flint and I both would be. But part of that is, putting it out there that you don't know what you don't know, and I'm all for having quarterly work sessions on a handful of important topics.
Yeah.
Tourism, short-term rentals, housing affordability,
Yeah.
reducing wildfire risk,
Yeah.
community development, improving the planning department. With all 3 county commissioners,
Yeah.
you schedule it. It have to be a public meeting
Yeah.
to comply with the state's Open Public Meetings Act. But bring in the stakeholders, bring in experts in the industry, and let's have a conversation. Put the turd on the table and figure
100%.
out how we can get better together.
Yeah.
And if we have some of those things quarterly, strategically, you start stacking through a couple of years, maybe we can clear up some miscommunications. Maybe we can help each other get better, more efficient. So I just think that's part of what I think I offer is courageous leadership. I'm not afraid to put myself out there. Some people say, I don't want to look stupid in public or whatever. This is about getting better and making Chelan County better for the next generations. I believe that's what happened with me, and I want to give back.
Yep.
So
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Final
Cool.
word, 60-second response.
Okay.
I got this question a bunch.
You say 16 or 60?
60 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Because he's got to get
1
to the
minute.
point.
Yeah,
no, we
don't
gotta
make it-
bounce, man.
Yeah, so
lightning round.
people would come to you and they'd say, hey, you have no experience in politics.
Thank you.
What would be your response to that?
Thanks for the compliment.
How would that be?
here's
Is
the-
that a
here's the
strength or a
thing.
weakness?
No, I believe that the county commissioner role, the way I look at it, is just like managing a company. You got 6 or 8 direct reports. That, you got you got a budget. At the end of the day, it's people. You set a vision. You get people to buy into the vision. You build a team around that. When you have, first thing is you've got to get them to sign on to the vision and say, yes, this is something we want to do. And then you lay out actionable steps in order, and then you hold people accountable. That's the one where most companies end up failing is they They set out to do a thing, they say how they're going to do it, and then the accountability just goes flop on the backside.
Yeah.
So we use a system called Entrepreneurial Operating Systems inside our companies, EOS. I love it. You have meaningful meetings that you take direct to-dos away from the meeting, and next week you better have them done. And that's the way that I operate. So that's how I'd be as a county commissioner.
Okay. 6 seconds to you. People would say, you've been in politics a long time. We didn't need another politician in that role. What do you respond to that?
I think I bring a lot of experience. I served in the state house for 4 years, as a state senator for 8 years. In the process, I've worked with local, state, and federal officials. I can bring all that experience to Chelan County. And also in the process, I've worked with nearly every Chelan County business group, citizen group, nonprofit organization. So I have a lot of established and positive relationships with them. And I know for some people who just get elected to a position like county commissioner, it may take 3 years of their 4 years to get their feet on the ground and build those relationships. I believe I'm coming in with those relationships, and I could cut that down significantly. And hopefully after 3 to 6 months, I'm making significant contributions to Chelan County for the remainder of my term. So I'm proud of who I am, and I think I can bring a lot to Chelan County if given the opportunity.
Awesome. Ben, thanks for your time. I texted you late at night on short notice, and I'm grateful for you coming. Oh. And here's my exhortation. Either way this goes, I think we need both of you men leaning in hard to make our county better. I think there's a lot of common ground. I think there's some distinct differences, but I plan on partnering with both of you as a leader in the church and as a private business owner and a private homeowner. I want Chelan County to be better, and I believe both you men need to be involved deeply for that to happen. So thanks for taking the risk, stepping out, and we'll see how things go in a couple of days.
Cool.
Likewise.
All right.
Thanks a lot,
thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.